Hey guys, Dave Voss here with another Ableton tutorial for you. So today, I've had a comment from João Duarte, known as Shiro Sama, who wants to know how to master using Ableton Lights stock plugins. So I'm going to have a go and show you a little bit of a few mastering things in Ableton today. So I've got a tune here that I've been working on, and I'll play a little bit of it with no mastering plugins on to start with, and we'll just work through, start putting in a few of these that you can apply to any DAW or any of your tracks. This is what the track sounds like without any mastering applied. Let's give it a bit of a play. Okay, so that's a little taster of how the track sounds at the minute. And the first thing I'd like to do is, used to do this in Logic quite a lot and just use their stock plugins. I've used Ozone a couple of times and that's quite good, but it tends to be more of a flow chart really than actually making anything sound better. So first thing I'll start with an EQ is the first thing I'll put on the master channel and turn this on. And looking to roll off a little bit of the lowest frequencies here. I mean, it's quite a bass heavy track, so I don't want to take too much off, but so a sloped first setting here by changing this, which normally comes up as this sort of Y shape. Put that into a slope setting. A little bit of a boost where we're cutting just before we cut here, and then cutting off any of the low frequencies. We heard about 30 hertz. We're not really going to hear any of that sub bass. There is some low bass in this, but around there should do a little bit of a dip. The next thing I find is somewhere about in the mid-range. Usually all tracks have a little bit of a problem in the mid-range. There's too much muddiness around 500 hertz, so I might just dip that here. The important thing about applying EQ in the mastering phase is that you only dip by or cut or boost by a couple of dBs here and there. Nothing too extreme, none of this kind of these sort of extreme changes going on, just very subtle changes because you'll be affecting the entire track. So cutting anything out here quite extreme might affect some of your instruments in a negative way. So just a little bit of a scoop maybe where the 500 mark is. And then what I normally do is just basically just boost a bit of the top. So I'm going to add in another EQ point just so I've got a bit more control, and just boost a little bit here for brightness. So the two stages of mastering, two areas of mastering that people look out for is loudness and brightness really, and this is really where I'm trying to get my brightness from, sort of cutting out areas of the frequency spectrum that are not that important or not quite as important, by leaving this brightness in here and a little bit of low end here before the scoop. It means our kick drum and our hi-hats, the parts of the drums that are going to give it energy, and the melody parts are going to stand out a bit more, whereas the backing sort of chords and other sections are going to be a little bit lower in the mix here. So a simple little bit of EQ, and then multi-band compression is one of the staples of mastering. It's one of the main things. Allows you to compress some areas more than others within this frequency range. So I'm going to turn this on now and start to just boost and cut some. We've got lows here and we've got highs here. So I'm going to set my lows to below about 300 hertz, and just start maybe shaving off a little bit of the input on those. Yeah, shave off a little bit of the input on the lows. Might leave the highs as they are. They're probably okay with the brightness we've got there. So just a little bit of a change, but what you need to do is play your track and see what's going on. We've also got a mid one here as well. So maybe I'll put it on and we'll see what it's doing here. Okay, what I'm going to do is just preview this without these two on to start with, and then you can hear the difference hopefully between the two. Okay, the track's starting to have a bit more life now. So you can EQ and compress again a couple more times. People tend to like to do multiple instances of EQ and compression, so I won't keep going into this again and again, but that's the basis of what I'd start with. Then what I tend to do is stick a reverb on it just slightly for a bit of glue, so I'm going to just turn down a few of these things, give it a really kind of small size and a really low wet dry to start with, and start bringing in this reverb just to glue the track together. So let's have a little listen with this. I'm going to bypass it as well. Okay, so that's not so bad. That's okay at the minute. One thing I used to do in Logic, which isn't available in Ableton, or there's not a way I'm aware of using it at the moment, is stereo imaging, which is really cool. The plugin in Logic allows you to shrink the bass, and spread out the top end. So what I'm going to do for this is I'm going to use an auto pan on a send channel. I'm going to spread the amount out, and only send sounds that aren't my bass or kick drum, because they need to they need to stay straight down the center. We don't want any panning on those. So in fact, there's no panning on this track yet anyway, so everything is completely in mono. But what I'm going to do is just send all of these sounds, these sort of stationary, in fact I'll leave the snare where it is, but the stationary samples that I have going on. I made some samples out of stationary in the study, staplers, mouse clicks, things like that, which actually I've made as a free sample pack for anyone who subscribes to this channel. So if you subscribe to the channel, I will email and private message me your email address. I'll send out a free copy of that sample pack for you. So I'm going to send anything that's not got kick drum and bass in just entirely to this stereo imager for now, just to give some width to the top end. Anything above a certain frequency, let's just stick all those through here. So that should be the most part of it. And that should have left our kick drum sometimes you might want to do a bit of parallel compression in between this as well. Obviously, I'm doing this on an unbounced mix of the track, so it's not very easy for me to do parallel compression without bouncing all this out. So I'll skip that stage for you. But essentially, parallel compression, you want to be applying some extreme settings to another copy of your track and then blending it in with the original. So perhaps what I'll do is another tutorial just on parallel compression that's separately and more in depth. But for this, the final stage is limiting. So some people may just put a limiter on their mix like this anyway, just to see what kind of results they get and what it might sound like when they're going to send their track off to be mastered. So I'm going to stick this limiter on. Standard procedure, what I tend to do is just lower the ceiling. It was sometimes standard limiters open the ceiling set at 0 dB, just lower that to minus 0.3 roughly, or around there or thereabouts. That means anything that may have got close to 0 dB would be cut off. We won't hear that, and it's not going to distort. And then what we can do is just change this gain setting very simply to bring up the volume of our track without it going over and clipping that level. So I'm going to just do that So notice when I get to above 10 dB of gain, it starts to get a bit nasty, granularized and distorted, and it's a glitchy track. That's not what we want, so you've got to use your ear a little bit here. And so I'll turn that down. I think about 5 was the limit. I was getting to about 5, it's giving our track a bit more of a boost, a bit more volume, and a bit more punch, but without distorting. So in fact, I'm happy with about 3 to 4, so let's try that again. Okay, so there you go. It's just a basic mastering tutorial. A lot of these techniques can be applied to any DAW that you use, just using basic EQ. Logic's linear phase EQ is nice, multi-band compressors, a little bit of reverb to glue the track together, and a limiter. Just some real main effects that you would definitely use if you're going to do some mastering. So have a look around, have a little go with these things, and just see what results you get. It's a good idea to get a bit of an image of what your track might sound like before you send it off for mastering. I do offer a mastering service, £25 per track, and so check out my website davidvoss.org, where you can find out more about that. Get in touch with me for a free sample pack and subscribe if you want to receive that as well. Okay, cheers.